kaa mo'olelo poko lelo ke kaahi mo Hawaiian nei. Chuku mai la koe hua kumakiau. Hei kaa mo'olelo poko lelo ke kaahi mo Hawaiian nei. Chuku mai la koe hua kumakiau. Ka ahi ka hulu I ke alahau ai wailuku. Ka ahi ka hulu I shuku o Hawaii. Hulo no kalani e no kalani o kalakaua. Ka mea I kākau kona inua ka palapala no ka chuku. Hulo no kalani e no kalani o kalakaua. Ka mea I kākau kona inua ka palapala no ka chuku. Ka ahi ka hulu I ke alahau ai wailuku. Ka ahi ka hulu I chuku o Hawaii.
Aloha! Today we're here to tell you about the history of the railroads of Hawaii, and later we'll take a ride with the Hawaiian Railway Society. The development of railroads under the Kingdom of Hawaii represented perhaps the most advanced degree of industrial development of any Pacific nation in the 19th century. Subsequent developments during the expansion of the Republic and absorption by the United States during the territorial period mark the heights of railroading in Hawaii, which in many ways bridged the gap from the pre-industrial period to Hawaii's modern role in the international interdependent economics of the emerging Pacific Rim. For these reasons, portions of the old railroads, their related architectural landmarks and rolling stock have been or are in the process of being placed upon the state and national registries of historic places. The status of railroading and its various components are well established on the National Register, which contains hundreds of railroad rights-of-ways, yards, stations, museums, car barns, roundhouses, rolling stock, and bridges. That the remnants of the 60 or so railroads which once existed in this state are included as protected properties is only fitting. The purpose of this documentary is to describe the approximately 45 sugar plantation railroads which existed on 6 islands from 1879 to about 1957, the military railroads from post-World War I to 1972, and the history of amateur restoration efforts in Hawaii since 1946, including the 2 currently operating railroads. Of these, one is privately operated as an amusement and consists only partially of historical components of old Hawaiian railroads. The other is entirely historical and operated by the Hawaii Railway Society on a right-of-way which is included in the national and state registries of historic places, using historical rolling stock operating essentially as a railroad museum. The first use of steam-powered locomotives in the kingdom took place officially on July 20th, 1879. Prior to this time, rails and carts were used at Honolulu's harbor since 1857 and at Kauai High since 1858. As a passenger and freight carrier, the Kahului and Wailuku Railroad was the first rail common carrier to operate under the new Railway Act, emplaced by King Kalakaua in 1878 as part of the overall developments in response to the Reciprocal Trade Act of 1876. The overall investment boom in the sugar industry at the time made necessary many harbor and road improvements, and railroads were at that time the most practical method of conveying large amounts of sugar to the wharves and harbors which were being constructed to receive the new large ocean-going steamships. The old system of wagons and mule trains simply could not move the amounts of sugar to be harvested. The subsidy of $2,500 per mile offered by the government of Hawaii did not apply to the many sugarcane railroads, however, but was meant to stimulate mainline railroad development. In this way, the local plantation systems would be connected to each other and to the ports via the common carriers. Often, bulk cane was hauled over both private and main lines to the mills, depending on the local geography. In two cases, the common carriers, one on Kauai and one in North Kohala, hauled only bags of processed sugar to the ports. Also, incoming cargoes, workers, equipment, supplies, and building materials were taken to the plantations and mills and towns by way of rail. Sugar, canned and fresh pineapple, and other fresh vegetables and staples often reached population centers such as Hilo or Honolulu by rail. Prior to this time, roads did not reach every town or ahupua'a along the coast, and the development of the common carriers on the main islands, both literally and figuratively, were to lay the foundations and infrastructure for later industrial and agricultural development and integration of the economy of the islands. The history of railroading on Oahu also goes back to the Kingdom of Hawaii and B.F. Dillingham. The charter for the Oahu Railroad and Land Company was signed on September 11, 1888 by King Kalakaua. On the King's birthday, November 16, 1889, 4,000 passengers rode special commemorative trains from Iwilei Station to Pearl City Station and back. In 1893, the line extended through Ewa to Waianae. During the period of the kingdom, the several Oahu plantations had installed cane-haul railroads, including Waimanalo Sugar Company, established in 1883 with a 36-inch gauge, Waianae Sugar Company, established 1883, a 30-inch gauge, Ewa Plantation Company since 1881 at 36 inches, and Heia Agricultural Company, which began its tiny 20-inch gauge system in 1891. At the time of the revolution against the monarchy, Waianae Plantation connected to the 36-inch main line, which was then standard on Oahu, and was the end of the line. With the development boom after the establishment of the Republic, the OR&L was extended to Kahuku by 1899, and from there to Kahana Valley. Soon, the 36-inch gauge Ko'olau Railway was developed, making it the second main line on Oahu. By now, new railroads were developed at Kahuku Plantation Company, Oahu Sugar Company at Waipahu, and Waialua Agricultural Company. Also on Oahu, the Waihole Water Company used two locomotives from 1913 to 1917 in the construction of the water project and systems of the tunnels through the Ko'olau Mountains from Waihole. The first amateur railroad efforts were organized by the short-lived Hibiscus and Haliconia Short Line Railroad. It used Ko'olau Railroad's old right-of-way and leased an engine and passenger cars from Oahu Railroad and Land Company. Its weekend pleasure rides ceased in 1949 when the unmaintained rails were finally considered inoperable and unsafe. The railroad did not make enough proceeds to cover operations, let alone maintenance. Portions of the old track can be found between Kahuku and Kahana Bay. From 1961 to 1964, the Kahului Railroad on Maui leased an old motor coach to the Pacific Seaboard Railroad, which operated non-scheduled private service to rail buffs and executives of the Kahului and Wailuku Railroad after discontinuation of passenger service. Amateur efforts on Kauai and Hawaii did not succeed and were unfortunately limited to one-time tours for railroad old-timers and retirees, usually a few days ahead of the scrap metal collectors. However, the Grove Farm Company has since 1981 restored 3 old locomotives, including a 30-inch Hohenzollern engine, vintage 1887, named Paulo. Also restored by Grove in 1975 was Wainiha, an 1887 Baldwin, and Kaipu, a 1925 Baldwin. The Wahiawa is also in the process of being restored. All 4 engines comprise the Grove Farms locomotive collection. A mere 750 feet of track, however, does not permit excursion trips. On Oahu, the efforts of the Hawaii Railway Society have proven effective in preserving not only part of the old OR&L main line, but the nucleus of a fine railway museum. To begin the story, it's necessary to explain that with wartime developments, the U.S. Army and Navy were the 2 largest clients of the Oahu Railway and Land Company. During the 1920s, 2 spurs had been constructed from the Wahiawa branch of the OR&L, built to haul canned pineapple to the docks in Honolulu through Schofield Barracks to move heavy cargo and personnel. The Navy also used the main line from Fort Weaver at Ewa to the airfield at Barbers Point and the ammunition depot at Lualualei. After World War II, the Army spurs at Schofield and an emergency Army rail link from Wahiawa to Haleiwa were removed. A highway was built to Haleiwa on the roadbed, which had been built in case the main line around Kaena Point to the airfield at Kahuku was bombed. When the infant state of Hawaii acted to foreclose on the charter of the OR&L because it no longer acted as a railroad, the Congress allocated funds to purchase the line from Ewa to Lualua to service the ammunition depot. After the Navy abandoned the land in 1968, it was placed on the National Registry of Historic Places. Including in the designation is the roadbed and right-of-way. The collection of rolling stock includes the old Kauila, OR&L number 6, a small locomotive purchased by the Kingdom to remove rock from Mo'ili'ili Quarry, 3 Navy diesel locomotives, and the badly deteriorated Dillingham private car. In addition, several service vehicles are used to maintain the line. Plantation locomotives include the Wailua Agricultural Company No. 6, the only locomotive built in Hawaii out of parts imported from Baldwin Locomotive Works, and the tiny Ewa Plantation Company No. 1 locomotive named Ewa. Former OR&L equipment is also included.
Ke kaa mupolelo poko lelu ke kaa ahi mo Hawaiian nei. Shuku shuku mai la koe hua kumaki ala. Ke kaa mupolelo poko lelu ke kaa ahi mo Hawaiian nei. Shuku mai la koe hua kumaki ala. Ka ahi ka hulu I ke alahau ai wailuku. Ka ahi ka hulu I shuku o Hawaii. Hulo no kalani e no kalani o kalakaua. Ka mea I kākau kona inua, ka palapala no ka chuku. Hulo no kalani e no kalani o kalakaua. Ka mea I kākau kona inua, ka palapala no ka chuku. Ka ahi ka hulu I ke alahau ai wailuku. Ka ahi ka hulu I chuku o Hawaii. Alohe mai ina keiki hanau uka, alohe mai I ka mo'olelo tuku. A I ko o kokolani hope, ka mea I kakau kona inoa. Lohe mai ina keiki hanau uka, alohe mai I ka mo'olelo tuku. A I ko o kokolani hope, ka mea I kakau kona inoa. Ka ahi ka hulu I ke alahau ai wailuku. Ka ahi ka hulu I chuku o Hawaii. Chuku o Hawaii.
Historical footage for this program was provided by Thomas Alva Edison, the Dillingham family, the Bishop Museum, and the UH Wong Audiovisual Center. And now, let's take a look at the operations of the Hawaiian Railway Society today. To begin, here are scenes from the October 1992 crossing of Fort Weaver Road for the first time in 25 years, and the striving of a ceremonial spike to commemorate the event. These festivities represent the years of hard work by the members of the Hawaiian Railway Society, Chapter 100 of the National Railroad Historical Society. If you are interested in helping amateur railroad restoration in Hawaii or making a donation, please call the number listed at the end of this program. Mahalo.
hului ke alahau ai waluku Ka ahi ka hului chuku chuku mu o Hawaii Chuku chuku mu o Hawaii
First time in 25 years. Well, going into Waipahu.
Great.
The Hawaiian Railway Society rail yard at Ewa Mill will be included as part of the Ewa Historic District. As a community service, the Hawaiian Railway Society offers historic railroad tours every Sunday afternoon at 1 and 3 o'clock p.m. Railroad exhibits are also available for examination, so bring the kids and a picnic lunch and enjoy yourself. Please feel free to call for information about tours for school and community groups. Weekday group tours can be arranged. Thanks for watching, and I hope you'll join us on any Sunday. And now, let's take a ride through yesteryear and through the sugarcane with the Hawaiian Railway Society. Mahalo.
Okay, coming up on the Mauka side of the train, we've got a large coral pit. This pit was dug in 1940, and the coral inside was mixed with tarmac, and that's what made all the major runways and roads on Barbers Point. Now, if you look inside, you can see the top of a crane sticking up. That crane was used to dig the pit, and as it dug down, the road eroded, and they couldn't pull it back out. So it's been sitting there for 50 years now. That pit is filled with about 40-50 feet of water at this point. On the Kai side of the train, we've got some large plants that kind of look like aloe with a tree growing out in the middle of them. These are called sisal. was Benjamin Dillingham's desire to diversify the economy of Hawaii beyond just sugarcane and pineapple. So he started the Hawaii Fiber Company, and he started a sisal plantation in this area. Sisal is used for making rope and hemp and matting. Now the quality of the sisal was very high indeed, but even in the 1890s we faced the same problems we do today, and that was that Hawaii's labor costs and the transportation costs were just too high to make the plantation viable. So this is all that remains of a once vast sisal plantation. Now there used to be an OR&L stop in the village of Sisal, right around in this area. Now Sisal wasn't a very big town. To give you an idea, we are just entering the city limits of downtown Sisal. And now we are just leaving the city limits of downtown Sisal. The town closed up at the same time that the plantation did. Look at all this rust. We didn't run out of it for a whole week. Look at all the rust. I mean, that's new, that orange, right? Now back to the Mauka side of the train. About 3/4 of a mile up is a small hillock with 2 concrete bunkers in it. That is Fort Barrett. Fort Barrett was built in 1932. 2 guns that were originally destined for the Lexington and Saratoga. Because of the Arms Reduction Agreement of 1926, they were instead placed in Fort Barrett. Now they had a 360-degree swing. In fact, the downrange target area was the west end of Molokai. The 16-inch guns could fire their shells 28 miles out to sea. Just before the war, the tops of the guns were covered over to protect them. This limited the swing only to the seaward direction. Now the only attack that's ever occurred on Oahu was December 7th, 41, and that was an aerial attack. These guns were absolutely useless against an aerial target, were never fired. After the Second World War, they were dismantled and the fort was welded shut. The OR&L ran one more train up there to pick the guns up. En route back to Pearl Harbor, one of the guns in the second car fell off the train and derailed 3 cars. There is a discussion that as the Villages of Kapolei project progressed, that they may reopen Fort Barrett as a military museum. Now in just a few seconds you're going to see the locomotive veer off to the left. That's not a major problem. We will be following it as we enter the eastern siding switch for Jensen Siding. Now the OR&L is a single-track railroad. Located every several miles, there need to be passing sidings so that a faster train can overtake a slower train, or the 2 trains moving in opposing directions can meet and pass each other. Now in this siding, we are using the siding, and these cars are stored on the main line. Now we're doing that because our siding is in better shape than the main line in this area. These cars have a bridge that we removed from the Ko'olina Resort, and we're saving the pieces for future usage. Jensen's is about a half-mile long, which is normally enough for most of the trains that ran on the OR&L. Standard practice would be at each station, the trains would be given their meet orders. The lower priority train would enter the siding and wait for the higher priority train to come by on the main line. And nobody will be more surprised than us today if we meet another train, because we believe that we're the only train on the line. Yeah, I had my Coke on it. Now if you look up to the Mauka side again, you can see a couple of radar dishes up there. Those are the main transmit facility for Hawaiian telephone. So all of your mainland and inter-island and international calls begin in this location, and they beam up to Intelsat for their transmission to the rest of the world. That is the Hawaiian state bird over there, the large white crane. This is building the Villages of Kapolei Shopping Center.
Only the golf course.
That should be interesting. Now Benjamin Dillingham built this railroad. he arrived in Hawaii in 1865 for the third time. He was a 21-year-old seaman. On this voyage, he broke his leg, so he had to stay behind in Hawaii to recuperate. Now, in doing so, he noticed the many lucrative business opportunities that were here. So he started several small businesses, and one thing that caught his eye was the western plain called Ewa. This is the driest spot on the island. It became Benjamin Dillingham's desire to build what we now call Waikiki in the Ewa Plain. He had talks with James Campbell, who owned all of this land, and he leased it from him. Now, he wanted to sublease the land to start agriculture and industry in this area. The only problem was that this road running along the Mauka side of the train was the only major road to get to this area. Barrington Highway and H1, of course, didn't exist. It took about a day to a day and a half to get from downtown Honolulu to where we are right now. So Dillingham had talks with the kingdom and decided to build a railroad to speed transport. Now, in building the railroad, Dillingham had utilized all of his money and a considerable amount of money from other investors. So he was basically broke. He couldn't lease his land, but he needed people to move to this area. So he offered it for homesteading, with the concept that if people moved in, businesses and agriculture would follow. What saved Benjamin Dillingham was sugarcane. By hauling cane, he made his railroad profitable to the point that it was one of the few railroads in the United States that paid a dividend every year of its existence. Now, sugarcane takes about 2 years to grow. During that time, it has to be protected from the pests that attack it, and it has to be weeded and irrigated. Now, we're going to come to a halt here. This is Kalialoa Boulevard, the entrance to Campbell Industrial Park. And normally during the week, we take a lot of school groups, church groups, things like that, and we usually terminate at this point because Kalialoa Boulevard is very busy. On the weekend, it's not. We can go the full length of our run into Ko'olina. We're going to stop and drop our flagman. Hope that answers her question.